Like many organizations that aspire to deliver better experience, there's a problem, and it's a big problem, okay, and it's not gone yet. It still exists and is persistent. And that is technology thinking, not people thinking, okay? It works like this. Remember their brief. Create a compelling brand. This was their concept. We want you to wrap a brand around our proposition, our technology ecology. That's what we want you to do. And this is a very, very typical thing that happens, yeah? But typically, when I get involved in working with projects, the brand is delivered to us in the glory of its, corporate identity, with people that can explain its usage. We don't normally get asked to say, hey guys, what we want you to do is take our product, rebrand it, so that we can sell it in different ways, okay? That's not what happens. And what we kind of have to explain is that this kind of way of thinking is what we would consider very micro. I mean, essentially, when we're thinking about a brand, in contrast to thinking about a product or a service, is that we're not really thinking about interactions. We're thinking about attitudes. We're thinking about expectations. And it is that thinking that is quite different to say how you would design something that you have to touch or swipe or click, etc. Now this kind of goes back to what Kareem was saying yesterday about methodology, being able to think about what you need to know, what you need to understand. And the problem kind of manifests itself like this. The brief, at its very best, could be considered notional. It's a notional idea of the problem that they're trying to address. Think about what Eric said in the last presentation. Silos in silos. I mean, if you kind of discovered that that's the situation that you're in, that is what we would say in England is bloody annoying. Because it definitely is going to mean more time. It's absolutely going to require you to go and speak to the client and actually say, we're going to need more time, which they know, more time, more money, okay? And it could have cascading effects in terms of delivery and other things that are going on. But that's typical in terms of what we do, yeah? We kind of, we take on these projects and these things that we do, and the problems that are presented to us are kind of notionally understood, yeah? What we really need to be able to do is be very strategic about our understanding of these problems. We have to be able to understand their cause and effect. By understanding their cause and effect, what we can then start to understand is the requirements that might support some of those causes. Some of the requirements that completely underline what the problem is that we are trying to actually tackle. This requires strategic thinking. And I love this quote by Einstein. Knowledge of what is does not directly open the door to what should be. What that means is this. What we knew when we started this project in the beginning was not enough for us to be able to create a brand, for us to understand the scale of expectation or the types of attitude or the relationship between child and parent to be able to design and do this work. We did not know enough by a long way. So, what did we do? So, modeling for a user experience strategist is pretty critical, yeah? I would argue it's a key skill to be able to model. I expect anyone that is kind of doing something strategically on a project that I'm involved to be able to draw at any one moment what the model is, why they're doing it, and how it's changed. Because in that model, that tells me loads about the methodology, the kind of things that they've probably been trying to solve. It tells me a model can do that. This is why models are so powerful. This is why I'm kind of talking about how you frame models and why they're important. So what we did was we said, right, let's take that idea of the product being wrapped around the brand, and let's expand that, and let's think about the human connections, yeah? Let's transcend technology, and let's think about the human connections and what we're trying to support. And then let's take that a step further and start to explore those human relationships in a way where we can see an evolution of what they wanted to do in the beginning with what we think that they need to do to be able to bring this thing to life. So you can see this evolution where we move from expanding the technology bit to have this relationship with people, to really expanding it and talking about families and children and money and technology. And these are the things that we worked out through going through the research. These are the things that we discovered that were important to be able to communicate and actually design, not just in terms of physical interaction, but digital interaction as well. And ultimately, what we realized is when we took that perspective is that we're not really just evolving their brand. We are actually evolving their experience. This is what we are designing here. And it's really important that we kind of remember that we are designers, first and foremost. Design is a silent ambassador of your brand. Very wise words from the very uber Paul Rand. Yet we could easily put designing brands, or if you think about it, whether we are designing a brand or whether we are designing an experience, the thread is always design. This is what we're trying to do. We're trying to design something, okay? So when you put it in that perspective, what I'm really saying is that strategy itself is an act of design. And I would argue that it is strategy that differentiates when you apply it in how you would design a better experience. So let's frame it with this model that we love, yeah? The double diamond. I'm assuming you all know it, and it works like this. You've got this kind of discovery phase you go through where you're trying to understand stuff, and then you bring sense of all that together. You're defining stuff, yeah? This is first diamond. This is heartland territory for user experience strategists, okay? And what we're doing is we're moving from the beginning a very general problem to a specific problem, from a notional brief to a true brief. This is why you do the strategy stuff, to get that brief, to know what the problem is, specifically. Then you go through the second diamond stuff, you develop something, you deliver it, and if you do it right, in the right way, you've got this feedback. You've got validation of method, approach, thinking, output, etc., etc., etc. However, that's not how it works. I would argue in the last, say, 2 or 3 years, we do a lot more UX strategy now than we've ever done before. A lot of our projects have this component built in, but a lot didn't. And I would argue that what we actually have is an illusion, a massive imbalance. I mean, I'm being generous giving it a size at all. I mean, I'll ask a question, how many people do UX strategy here, but it's kind of folded in? It's kind of folded into the research. It's added in. How many? How many actually get paid to do UX strategy by a client? Yeah. Very, very few people get asked to do that, because that's not what people are asking you to do. But once you start to frame it in terms of what you understand about the problem, what you realize is that they all should be. I mean, it should really look something like this. And what you should have is kind of multiple diamonds that repeat. So if you imagine like multiple diamonds and a circle between them as a type of iteration, that's really what I'm talking about. An experience-focused project will be more heavily focused on actually trying to understand, discover the problem, and actually trying to define it and validate it meaningfully before I would even argue that there was code. But what happens? No, what we're going to do is we're going to make something. We're going to go fast, we're going to iterate. Okay. But we don't even understand what the problem is. But we will if we start coding. Really? I mean, I'm just not that clever. So I'm very polite, and I look at them and I think, I don't even know what they're talking about. And they look at me like, you must know what we're talking about because you're an expert. And I'm like, well, not that expert. Jobs. Design is not just what it looks like, what it feels like. Design is how it works. And this is the thing that we are selling to clients. They don't call it that, they call it this, the so what, yeah? You know when you do that stuff with the client and you pitch your stuff and it's amazing and you're like, you're going to give them that da-da moment and they look at you with that so what face, or they actually say the words as well, so what, yeah. You know, they want to know what its function is. They get the kind of look and feel stuff. You know, they're smart. We live in a digital society. It's all around us. We get that now. Digital as a word's declining because its acceptance is pretty much, you know, it's kind of digimodernism, yeah? This is the epoch that's upon us. So we could easily replace the word design or brand there, okay? Or experience. So how we design and what we design and why we design are all deeply interrelated. And we need to know how those things work. Because ultimately, we're taking our client on this journey with us, yeah? This crazy journey that can feel like a space trip. Why don't you come and join me on the moon? It's cool there. It's like, okay, no. You know, so you have to be able to talk with them in the way that they understand it. The most simplest way I'm going to put it, and this is how I explain it, you have to match them. Match. It's not about being better or worse. It's not about being faster or slower. It's about matching them. You have to discover how to match them. And if you match them well, that tends to result in fantastic collaboration. If you create a mismatch because you don't like the client, you don't think they're smart enough, their people aren't good enough, blah, 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 blah. I just say, have we matched them yet? That's how we think of it. Have we matched them? Match. It kind of transcends the personal nonsense of the other stuff that goes on when you're collaborating with clients.